Hello and welcome to UT Health San Antonio Leadership Podcast, the show that profiles individuals in leadership positions at UT Health San Antonio. I'm your host, Celeste Rodriguez, and today we're going to talk about personal growth, success, and doing everything it takes to make lives better. My guest today is Dr. Gary Guest. He's the Associate Dean for Patient Care and Professor of Comprehensive Dentistry for the School of Dentistry with UT Health San Antonio. Dr. Guest has been part of the UT Health family for over 43 years and received his Bachelor's of Science in Biology from Texas Tech University and his Doctor of Dental Surgery right here from UT Health San Antonio. Join me for a one-on-one conversation with Dr. Guest as we talk about his path to leadership and the vision and values that shaped his career. Please welcome Dr. Guest. Thank you so much, Dr. Guest, for joining us on our leadership podcast today. It's an honor to have you here. I want all of our listeners here at UT Health to know, what does the Associate Dean for Patient Care, and you're honestly a Professor of Comprehensive Dentistry as well, what do you do here at UT Health San Antonio?
So the Associate Dean is really Office of Patient Care. The dental school, like medicine, who has the mark, we have the Center for Oral Health Care and Research, is really, it's an outpatient clinic facility, 200,000 square feet. So I look at my job more akin to a hospital administrator as part of the Associate Dean. When you talk about a health science center, we're in the unique business of both providing patient care and education. So that's where you have to interface with faculty, educational programs, Commission on Dental Accreditation, but yet you're still under the purview of regulatory things from the city, state, the federal type things.
And especially being an academic institution, it's like a whole nother level.
Right.
When did the Center for Oral Health, when did that open?
2015. We moved in June of 2015, so been there close to 8 years
And
now.
for our listeners who don't know, where is it located?
It's located 8210 Floyd Curl, just south of the Mark Building on the North Campus. Real exciting opportunity for us.
Yeah.
It is really our patient care facility. We still have a presence on the main campus with our pre-doctoral program in year 1 and 2.
Awesome. Well, yeah, it's a beautiful building, and I'm so glad that you were one of the folks that spearheaded that. And tell me about your team. How big is the team that you supervise?
In the Office of Patient Care, we have, it's evolved more recently. We have a chief dental officer, but we have a number of areas we're responsible for. So we have a sterile processing area, much akin to a hospital does. We have a staff that does that. We have a large cadre of dental assistants. That includes even radiology technicians, people that maybe started as dental assistants and kind of morphed into that career. IT is a big part of what we've done. We've recently been sort of part of the edge, but a number of our people just carried over those duties. Have our own electronic patient record system, PACS, and so that you have to support that. We have all the instrument distribution, so like dispensing. We have unique dental equipment, so we have mechanics that work for us. And then indirectly from our office is all the revenue cycle activities that you have with the patient care activity. And then a number of patient service reps, particularly our office from the pre-doctoral program, which is about 50% of the business. These are college students becoming dentists as opposed to residents or advanced education students who are dentists already going on for advanced care. Now, we still interface a number of operational things that have to be done with the Office of Patient Care, whether it's technology, regulation, policies, procedures. So it's not like we're exclusively for the pre-doc program. So there's a lot of blend of activities with the clinic directors, clinic managers, and the advanced training programs.
And that one big location, are there other locations as well?
We have our primary other two locations that belong to us is Ricardo Salinas Clinic. That's on the southwest part of San Antonio. That's pediatric dentistry. We've had a presence there for a number of years. It's a collaboration with the city of San Antonio. And then we have a clinic in Laredo. Again, an extension for our pediatric training program. We do have general dentists there. Our students rotate, and it's in the Laredo Health Department clinic. And then more recently, which an activity I'll do tomorrow, is we're expanding our dental hygiene program. And now that the Laredo campus is part of the University of Texas system, it's an educational part. UT Health San Antonio plays a part. In dentistry, we're going to expand and have a cohort of dental hygiene students will be doing their training there. So we've recently just completing a preclinical lab facility on that campus, and that cohort's starting down there as we speak.
And, I just thought about this, working for the institution, because I know you've been here for over 40 years.
Mhm.
How many dental students do you think you've impacted? How many in the 40
Yeah,
years?
that's an interesting one. We when I first started my class, 152, and then it was probably 7 or 8 years after I'd graduated that most of the state schools reduced. I think at one time we went down to 80 something, and then right now an entering student class of 100, and then in the third year we take 20 international students.
Wow.
So by the time we start our third year, you have 120 now in a class,
Yeah,
so
that's
240, and then we have roughly 110 residents or advanced training students. So those are sort of all under the umbrella. But my main impact from a teaching standpoint has been the pre-doctoral program. So the quick math says 100 times 43 years, and you can do a fair number. Yeah,
A ton.
yeah. And that is the joy of working here. My wife's also a teacher, and we talk about it a lot. It's the impact you make later on. You hear your students that go on and do great things, and you're like, well, maybe I was just a little part of their professional development or the skill set, whether it's K through 12 or it's professional school. You've had
you definitely made an
have
impact.
a part on that. Yeah.
A ton of people. And I know you did your bachelor's at Texas Tech.
Yeah.
Go Raiders.
Yeah.
Are you a native Texan?
I'm a native Texan. Yeah.
Really? Where are you from?
I'm from San Antonio and
Nice.
went to Lubbock because I had I ran track for Texas Tech.
You
yeah,
did.
yeah.
What did you run?
I was cross country, and then
cross country.
Yeah, cross country in the fall,
Uh-huh.
3 mile, and steeplechase during the spring.
Wow.
So I was a walk-on. My high school coach wanted me could have gotten me a scholarship to a smaller school. I wanted to try my luck at a big school, so I wrote the coach, and the rest is history.
I love that. Go big or go home.
Yeah,
huh?
go big or go home. Yeah,
That's
and
awesome.
it was a interesting experience for me. I had a great coach, and I think for my professional career, one of the things it did when I was in college, you were already in time management
Oh,
because
sure.
you had to finish your classes. We had to be for workouts every afternoon. Then you had to study. So, it was a really different experience than a lot of my other friends in college
Right.
because you had a very structured week because of both your academics and the athletics.
Being a college athlete is definitely a different flavor of
Yeah,
college.
yeah.
And out in West Texas as well. I mean, there's not
Yeah.
too much out there. So.
Well, and I was fond of Texas Tech because, if you say at one time UT Austin, A&M, I mean, the town is geared towards the college. That's the way Tech was, very supportive of the campus, and so I had a great experience.
That's
while I was
awesome.
there.
And what high school did you go to here in
MacArthur,
San Antonio?
here in San Antonio, northeast side, yeah.
Nice.
My dad's a CPA. He had an accounting firm out on Loop 410, so, lived right out where MacArthur was, and that was the days before Churchill High School, Reagan High School, other ones now didn't even exist,
Wow. Yeah, I was going to ask, who were the big rivals back then?
Well, for us, it was Lee.
Okay.
Lee was state champion, several years. Churchill went on to, do great things. We've all heard about Reagan and those. It's interesting to see in that area how that's gone. But at one time, in Northeast Independent School District, it was just Lee and MacArthur were the two high schools, and then Roosevelt and Churchill and others came later. So that was
Yeah. And so the next question I have is, tell me about where you grew up. I know you're a native San Antonio. Can you tell me what you love about this city and why you chose really to come back and stay here?
Well, it was interesting, just my career, not to kind of deviate. I was very fortunate when I was in school to be in a position to have interface with John Sherry, who was the dean at that time. John came from South Carolina. Was real transitional for our institution because we had a rich history of a great clinical program. John carried that through, but said, we need to be a great research facility as well. And with the president at that time, I think he negotiated several FTEs that were major researchers, clinical researchers that came in and really sort of changed our research front. Really got some funding, some notoriety. And John actually wanted me to. He took an interest in me, and I think for my career, he did. I had a couple other faculty members that sort of encouraged me to consider academics. But all that being said, Dr. Sherry wanted me to go to NIH and do a program there, and I felt, as my training was, I was trained as a clinician, and I felt that if I go to NIH, I need to do the advanced. I need to go at PhD.
Right.
So I didn't. At my point in that life, I saw I'm trained as a clinician. That's what I want to do. In retrospect, you could say, should I have done that? And there's been several other more advanced career things I did. Our university here had a wonderful teaching learning program, very comprehensive in scope, and they had an arrangement with UTSA. If I'd have just gone out and take a couple classes, I could have my master's in education. But short-sighted then, I'm busy. I shouldn't have. That would have probably been one I would have taken advantage of at the time. But anyway, through John's encouragement and just the way things lined up, I ended up here. I was very fortunate with him to be put in a department that had a really broad array of activity that they were doing.
Yeah.
It wasn't like the faculty were stepping on each other. And Charlie Morris was my chairman at that time. Was a fantastic chairman, and I think I was just fortunate in my career where I had chairmen that sort of paid attention to younger faculty in terms of what are the things that you need to do to kind of move up.
And give you kind of a plan.
Yeah, to go from being a clinical instructor, associate professor, all the way to professor. But, there's a young person, you don't know these things, and they kind of help guide you that you were starting to tick off the right things that would put you in that position.
Well, that's great to have a mentor at that early stage, because I think that's so important for anyone on any level, is to make sure that your trajectory of what you want to do is aligning with all the other boxes that you're having to check. Yeah,
and I think later in my career, very fortunate, Ken Kalkorff was dean here for a long number of years. One time was the longstanding dean. Bill Dodge, just recently passed away. He and I worked together closely in the Office of Patient Care, and eventually he did become dean. But they had a very strategic vision. Technology's been just one of those things that you gravitate to. Myself, I feel in an academic institution, whether you're dentistry, medicine, or whatever else, if you think of many of our departments, you have all these areas of expertise.
Yes.
And it's like a bicycle wheel, and it's all the spokes are all individual faculty and staff, and they bring their own unique skill set, but it's the whole skill set together that makes an institution really good. So mine, I felt, was just I gravitated toward technology. I had some exposure in undergraduate. The division I started working with was probably one of the first units to use computers as part of what they did. And then you rode the wave when we went from mainframe computers to personal computers and on from there. So for Ken and Bill, previous bosses, I was very fortunate. I had another colleague, Brent Dove, that was in the radiology side, that they saw where the future was going. And between them and I had another wonderful chairman, Steve Madison, they saw the big picture, they saw where it was going, and they realized it was going to take an effort for Dr. Dove and myself to move our institution, our school forward, and how you deploy technology at point of care, whether that's with patients and in the research arena. So when you have that support, that vision and that support and that buy-in with leadership, that made a huge difference too.
Oh, definitely, because the sky's the limit at that point,
yes.
right? And you're not afraid to take risks. You're not afraid to make mistakes. I think because you have the support, you're gonna get it right. And if not, you have redirection that you can do. So I think that's very important to have supportive.
Well, the joke you can always make is like you could say whether you wanted to buy a car or you wanted to buy a house, and you go fill out a loan application. And ask, how much money do you make? And my wife said, never enough. So I mean, I think our institution is the same way. There's always initiatives, there are things to do. So having support, because many of our initiatives takes investment of people and capital to do that. So I think that's where I was fortunate in my career, and they had the buy-in, and we were going to make those investments. And a lot of things where you had a vision of electronic records and imaging systems. I mean, just to think years and years, years and years ago, to see it to fruition. That was just a huge thing.
All the things that you've seen, when I think about it, and now a lot of the conversations are around AI technology.
Yes.
And it's like, how are we going to incorporate AI technology into what we do? And, that's a question for you too, because how do you see that,
Well, fortunately,
we're getting off on a tangent here, but it's still a good one.
Through this career, and I think Ken Kalkorff, he threw me in the deep end of the pool. There was a high-level group from many of the dental schools that were very technical savvy, some of them computing science majors and a dentist, engineers, that wrote a book, The Computer-Based Patient Record System. And this is back in the 80s. We wrote this book with this vision of, what it should be. Well, that's sort of carried over. So for a number of years, I've been on the American Dental Association Standard Committee for Dental Informatics, and they are the secretariat for ANSI, American National Standards Institute, for setting standards for dental informatics. And interesting you bring the subject up now. Probably the one biggest topic right now that this group's dealing with is AI. And the ADA has a different AI, not artificial intelligence, but augmented intelligence. And I think people need to understand the human is still making the choice, but there is a lot of concern of how the algorithms and that do. We do technical reports, we do standards, and you try to bring some of that information back to us. I feel it's a benefit for our institution, but and you're collaborating at a national level, and then with it being the ANSI now reports to ISO, so now you start talking about international standards, so that really expands your scope on how you look at things.
How you answer one question.
That's
really cool, and that's super cool.
And actually AI it's a topic worldwide now.
Yeah, it really is.
Yep.
Yeah. So tell me about your first job. What was the first role you ever had?
Here?
Paid job. It can be any job.
Paid job?
Yeah, your first paid job. I want to know.
When I was 16 years old?
Yes, I want to know.
Dilley, Texas.
Dilley,
Texas. Yeah.
What were you doing in Dilley, Texas?
My dad was again, he was CPA, as I said earlier, and he had an office mate that owned a construction company, and it was one of those things that, you go to school. My dad was a big believer in that. You go to school during the school, you work during the summer. Not do school. But he's really afraid of this. You're going to get burnt out of school if you go, year round.
Yeah.
And so, you needed a job. And, jobs for high school people, people always, you think back when you did, you're scrounging around trying to get, and so he goes, well, I'll put him to work. And so they took me to the superintendent's house at 5 o'clock in the morning, and we drove down to Dilley the first day, and I think it's the tiredest I've ever been. So they were, they had I think it was actually some federal funding to replace all the streets, curbing, sidewalk, streets in
like
Dilley,
a capital
Texas.
Improvements
And,
project.
capital improvement. Everybody knows, like, our summer, how hot it is. Well, imagine it's that hot. You're 16 years old, but it was a real girl. I lived down there during the week.
Oh, that's cool.
And at 16
it was like summer camp.
Well, it was more than summer camp. So I got thrown in with the workers, and you're one of the guys, and you living away from your parents. I think it was a growing up experience. So besides my heartbread of only getting paid $1.60 an hour for what I did.
Oh my God, $1.60
for
an
the
hour.
blood, sweat, and tears that you did. But there were a lot of things that you learn and you gained a perspective.
Those are invaluable, right?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And then here, my first job was in one of the research labs in the Department of Microbiology. I had the privilege of working with Dr. Wendell Winters. He's passed away recently, microbiologist that came from California. Great humor, young guy, very energetic, and so it was a great experience, and we actually were able to do 2 papers in the Journal of Dental Research, which at that time was probably the premier, with Wendell's guidance. He was a virologist, and we were able to do some things, collaborative work even with the VA here. So that was a real experience
cool.
and leverage that.
To go from that side and then also the other side on the clinical side. Yeah. And after graduating high school, did you know what you wanted to do professionally?
Yeah, it was kind of interesting. I come from a long history of accountants. Mom's only child. Dad's he's a CPA, as I said. My aunt was one of the first women CPAs in the state of Texas, UT grad, and so was my uncle. So. And my first cousin, he's an attorney, graduated from the UT Law School. But I mean, they were all kind of, business side of things. And for some reason, I gravitated towards healthcare. And my aunt, I was saying they lived in Houston, and so somehow I got with their appointments when they started seeing the orthodontist, and this is something that I would be really interested in doing. And so I think as I entered high school, I knew that was what I was going to do. My idea of physicians was my father-in-law was an anesthesiologist. He was in the days when, he got up all hours, night and day, would sleep with one foot on the floor, drove around fast all over town. Great great guy, but that's how I thought physicians were. You know, I didn't
Right.
know there were a lot of specialties like radiology, dermatology, because we didn't have any healthcare members in the family. So I thought dentistry seemed something that was, you know, at least it's a day job, you know. There's not many
Yeah.
dentists that like see patients all night or go to the, you know, I mean, it could happen, but I
Yeah.
thought, so I felt like that's what I wanted to do. And then by then, as you get later in high school, you start understanding if you want to go to medical school or dental school, you know,
Here's
you
what you
you
need.
can't like decide your junior year, oops, I'm going to start making up this GPA. You got to
Right.
know, you got to know day one.
Right,
So when I
yeah.
started tech, day one, you know, this is the grade point average I'm shooting for if I want to give myself a chance. And I would say most healthcare professionals can relate to that. Whether you're medicine, nursing, veterinary, you pretty much know this is the mark I got to shoot for if I'm going to give myself a reasonable chance to be accepted in a program like that. So when I started college, it was pre-dent to start with.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And it's awesome that it carried so far in your career too.
Yeah.
You know, that's awesome. And what now regarding your current role, I know you spoke about this a couple of times, but can you tell me how important it is, you know, now that you've been here over 40 years, how important is it for you to have a mentor?
I think it's very important. There's two things I think that come into play. My tidbit for younger faculty is a little bit like healthcare. I mean, all of us right now, you know, sometimes you take control of your healthcare. So, like all of us, you know, you could have your general physician, you could see some specialty, but you know, it's you are the one whose healthcare it is. You know, like
Right.
they didn't call me back. I need this. I need a test. You know that. You know, you still have to be
An advocate for
actively
yourself,
engaged
yeah.
for yourself. But it's also helpful, like all of us, that you know how many times you ask your friend, "Hey, I need to go to see someone. What's the process?" That's very helpful in itself. But I think for young people, no matter what they're doing, the mentorship comes in. Like I said earlier in our conversation, how I had some chairs that were, you know, hey, you need to think about being as an active member in a course. You need to work your way up to being a course director, both in the clinic and in a didactic course. Papers you're going to publish. So in other words, if you say, I want to move from instructor to assistant professor to
Right.
associate professor, it's not happening by accident.
Yeah.
So I think that's where the mentorship comes in. Obviously, in your young career, how are you paired up with projects? And then Dr. Kalkorff, when since he was my boss so long, he had this prophetic statement one time, and he goes, "There's scholarship in everything."
Right.
And what he meant by that was even in our training programs or patient care activity, if processes change, there's ways that your colleagues are interested in hearing about that. You know, so just a little thought ahead of time by surveys or whatever you do to say, hey, this is the thing we wanted to do. This is how we measured it. This is where we got.
Are we still on the right path?
Are we in the
too?
right path?
Yeah.
But so much of the time, like the professional associations, whether it's medicine, dentistry, nursing, your colleagues are interested in hearing, like,
Yeah.
what problem did you have? How did you solve it? And how did you know you solved it? Because, hey, we have that same problem, you know. And so, you know, that it kind of ends up being double duty. It lets you know you got there, but at the same time, you're starting to develop a national presence. You go to meetings, you make presentations. Sometimes you get invited. That if you don't kind of have a forward-thinking mindset, you could look up and be wonderful, but you've never been able to participate in a national group. And I think professor, you profess, and part of the professing is, you know, even outside the walls of our own institution.
And what's your greatest passion, both professionally and personal?
Well, that kind of varies. I mean, professionally, I think I've indicated earlier. I guess number one on the profession side, number one, like being here, is being involved in something bigger than just yourself. I had an opportunity to do private practice for a while and enjoyed it working with the patient, but it just seemed like, you know, in the end, it's just strictly, you know,
In and out.
kind of
Yeah.
in and out, where we've already talked about here with the teaching, the impact you have on professional lives, and, you know, being something part of it's having a little canoe versus, you know, driving an aircraft carrier, and it's just the scope of what it is kind of enamored me. And again, maybe my mentors early on, you're interested in being in dental education, which is a lot, maybe sometimes a little broader scope than the care aspect. The folks that are out there practicing everything, they hard workers, and I think that, you know, all of us sort of have to have a passion for where we see ourselves going. That happened to be mine. And then I've already mentioned about the technology piece. You know, that you got to have your hand on the rudder a little bit about,
Right.
you know, how this aircraft carrier steered itself and deployed new things, and that was exciting. Had an opportunity start with a frame of a bus and build a mobile dental van. We did the clinic at Laredo from a shell on the ground, just concrete, and 14-chair clinic. We've done our simulation lab, which has 128 stations. We renovated our clinics here, and then the crescendo was the project when we built the core.
Oh, yeah.
And so those are very unique opportunities that I would not have had
Right.
in practice. I had my own dental practice and built it, but there's a big difference between 2,500 square feet and 200,000 square feet
Yeah.
in terms of the scope and
all the
what's in-
impact that you get to make with everyone that walks through
Yes,
the door as
yeah,
well. Yeah, it's
yeah.
different. And then, so personally, what is your passion on a personal level?
I've always had a passion for, exercise, maintaining yourself. Probably my lessons learned, if I did some of the things again, would be, I've been very fortunate. I picked the right woman to start with, and that's been great. And got
That's
a
very crucial.
couple of great kids, and we have very good relationship with them. And so, how you
That's
do
so cool.
things with them has been really rewarding to see what they've done. For both of them, my father, like I told you, how he was an accountant. He was not prescriptive about what you do with your life. Just you want to be whatever. And we try to be that way with our kids, and they've gone on to do.
What do they do? Now I'm interested.
Well, actually, one is a dentist. She's a pediatric dentist in Houston, and then my son is a developer,
Nice.
and works for major corporation, and it's amazing what they do these days. And
Yes.
so hopefully a little bit of the technology kind of rubbed off on him, but that's a
I'm
path
sure.
that he picked. So
That's awesome. And how would you describe your leadership style?
I want to say I try to be collaborative. I feel I've always had the thing, you can't push stuff down people's throats.
Yes.
You want to make
Yeah.
them be kind of part of the, there's always problems, there's always changes, but how do you get people to participate? How do you get them to understand the background, why we need to do certain things? So the best that you can you get through to everybody all the time? I don't know that you can do that, but trying to do your best to understand there is a reason we're doing things,
Right.
and involve them in the in the
Yeah, for sure.
decision.
If there's buy-in for them and they feel like they're part of the process, they're going to work even harder for it, especially at an institution this size.
Right, and where rubber meets the road is the people that are down in the trenches, so to
Right.
speak. I mean, they're the ones that have to, that you would seek, input to guide, guide a solution. So
And what's the most important leadership lesson that you've learned over the years, and how has it proven to be invaluable?
that's a tough one. You've learned, lots of things through the years. I guess I'll start when one of the leadership institutes I did was you win the battles one at a time.
Mm-hmm.
So like I talked about the technology thing in terms of where we did in the late 90s, early 2000s, is that, you don't get all the faculty or staff in a room and say, this is, you can, but at some point it gets down to
Yeah.
when we deploy technology for our training programs, it got down to getting down to individual course directors, individual faculty, how to use this technology, what do you do with it? Same thing as we deployed electronic record systems, that was it. I think in my career now too as a leader is, and it's two things. One is, how do you always kind of look over the next mountain range?
Mm-hmm.
That, in other words, how could you always be prospective in terms of what's coming?
Right.
And I think for all of us in life, that's the hard part, is there's strategic and there's tactical. And many of us, every day we're tactical. We're just going through, trying to take care of today's things that are right in front of us.
Mm-hmm.
And it gets difficult sometimes to step back and say tactically, strategic planning is, that's its whole Bailu, but eventually devil's in the detail.
Oh,
You got to get
definitely.
down and a goal or whatever you're going to do could have like 50 steps that are
Yeah,
going
no, you're so right.
that
I
are going
mean-
to get you there. And then the other part, probably we wish you all did better, is a little bit of self-reflection. Try to pass that on to my students to say when things didn't go well, or how to go is like, well, what could I have done? What could you have done better? You kind of learn from that. So the next time you get into some situation, you kind of learn from yourself. I'm going to handle that a little bit better or differently. I guess that just kind of comes with, somewhat.
No, definitely. And I like the part about being strategic, because sometimes, you come to work and you have this to-do list and you're getting it all done. You're getting thrown a lot of different projects or different things, but is this still kind of part of the bigger picture of what we're trying to do? So I think taking a moment to self-reflect, I think that it's very important.
And I think it becomes, personally too, someone, you come, I had, one person in my life say one time that it's a curse if you don't, like what you're doing, blessing if you do. And so, sometimes we all have to kind of say, well, what am I doing? Do I like what I'm doing?
Yeah.
And if I don't, what am I doing about it? I do think I work now a lot of times with our managers and supervisors with their troops to say, what skill set could help them? To say, if you want them, say if they're on some type of ladder, they could maybe do some kind of move up, that it won't be an accident. They're going to acquire whatever skill set. We got the beauty now of a lot of online things you can do, face to face, opportunities that get thrown their way. But sometimes that's where, as managers, supervisors, leaders, you kind of got to work with people that you do see. And it has been interesting. And I think in more recent years, I've recognized my managers and supervisors, they kind of know who the best people on their team are.
Yeah,
and these are people that, that you can tell they're quick studies, they do this thing, and you definitely want to make sure you nurture them, because, one day maybe they might be your boss. But
exactly, and you're right, though. And the resources.
And you keep them here,
Yeah, and I think it's so important, too. I'm going to mention our Percipio, which is the online learning tool as well. I'm going to put a plug in for them, because there's so many resources now that are available online for managers that we didn't have before. But if for those folks that want to take advantage of it, I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah, and it comes on some of that is like, like I mentioned the groups that we do for outpatient clinic or the dental clinic. I mean, there's these different cohorts, and they have very different jobs. And so what would be a skill set for, like, say, a patient service rep might be different than the skill set that's dental assistant, surgical tech, that sort of thing. It could be completely different. So you have to customize. And like our dental mechanics, well, we need them doing a great job at that, so they go and they learn about more different systems, and they're just more valuable to us, to where now they're thinking strategic about.
And they're invested too, right? Because you're putting that energy back into them, and they're like, I want to be here. So I think that's a great point. Now, you've had a lot of projects in your career, but what project are you most proud of?
Man, that's a tough one.
I know, because you have so many.
Probably, the biggest one that most people can't, when I started here, there was no such thing as the internet. I mean, literally, I had the first computer, and it was
huge too, I'm
huge
sure.
Green screen connected to a mainframe. And you had this vision. You had this vision of ubiquitous computing. We forget now. We use it for everything. What I said for many years, we need a handheld computer, hence your phone that you carry around, today. But in all aspects, whether you're in healthcare or any other sector, how do you use technology? It's not having technology for the sake of technology. It's how can it make you more proficient, make you better, do whatever business sector.
Make lives better.
Can do that. And so having that vision, 40 years ago, 35, I guess, where it was really wheels up, and then to be in a position to see it through,
that's really
and
cool.
now be maintaining it. That's one. The second one was the Center for Oral Health Care, where we basically started with a vacant lot there, and it was a blank slate. There's no prefab dental clinics, and how you got to design, build something very
from the
unique,
ground up,
close working with a major architect and a major contractor. I mean, this is like...
No, that's a huge undertaking.
Think of your home, like on 100 steroids, and it had and that was a really unique experience, and that's demonstrable.
Oh, yeah, you can drive by every day and
I'll
see
be able
it.
to drive by 8210 Floyd Curl for a long time, and that building's going to be.
How long did that take? How long did that project take?
We were four and a half. It was design build, so we started. How does that building look on the lot, which was kind of amazing in itself. When we did the first schematic of how it kind of looks like it does today.
That's really
a lot of
cool.
time your land defines that, and then we put the shovel in the ground before we actually had finished all the inside planning. So that's the way you can get started. I know the system does that a lot. You can build things much more proficiently.
Yeah.
So that was about four, and then you had to operationalize it. So we literally, we moved from 7703 to 8210 over about 3 or 4 days, and that was a monstrous thing to get all our equipment and down there. And
I remember that.
And I want to say within a couple of weeks we were wheels up on seeing patients. So that was, and then just operationalized. We moved. There was not something called UT Dentistry. That was something that we felt we needed to do.
And brand it.
Yeah, and the business was more. You could use it never all together, but under some umbrella that was both our pre-doctoral and advanced training programs, and under that umbrella. So that's been a real pleasure to see that come together and have its own.
That's a huge one, yeah.
Yeah, and now we have people here with our marketing. They're really taking it, to the next level. But at least we set the stage for it.
That's awesome. Tell me about a challenging time, either professionally or personally, and what is your, what do you do to overcome these?
Well, number one, there's all that day-to-day stuff, and so I'll take this morning for example. I wake up at 3:00, and
every day you wake up at 3.
Well, it's a lot of days early, and you're thinking about the 60 things you want to try to do, and so I guess with my athletics, so I strap on my New Balances and I head out for a few miles, and. So I found
a few miles. How many miles do you run?
Well, yeah, I mean, I was a competitive runner, up until in my late 50s. So, this morning it's 3, something like that. But I find that it does, it takes some of the stress out. There's that part. Challenging. For here at the center that all of us have dealt with, the challenging of budgets, and the impact it has on all of our departments and the changes and adaptions that you have to make, that presents itself. The people dynamics, that those are always can be challenging, and those are things. How do you learn from yourself? Been very fortunate too through the years. How do you surround yourself with a good staff, that can help you with all those things, and they have a certain, skill set. And then even with the technology deployment, when we did a point of experience computing, we've had a laptop program for our students, 20 plus years. When you first do these things, it's, they finally realize, we're really going to do this. And,
this is happening.
And it is change. And then how do you deal, how do you keep plugging along to overcome, the problems with that. So, just the old adage, my kids say, eat the elephant one bite at a time, that you just keep gnawing through it, and you have to be persistent and adaptable to do that. So any of these things, same thing, we moved into the core. What are the wrinkles that you had to do, and how were you dynamic about new systems, changing things to best do patient care. And quite frankly, I think that's going to go on from now till infinity, that, we're always kind of adapting to new circumstances. So
whatever gets thrown our way these days. And now you got a good, speaking about staff, you have my old boss, so Shan Zhao's now the vice dean there in the dental school.
Yes.
And she's amazing, so I think y'all will be headed in the right direction.
Yeah, Stan is just, she's very strategic.
Yes.
I mean, what's the old adage, no money, no mission? I mean, people say that.
Yeah.
And so that's the other thing. I mean, since in my career, we were, in essence, 100% state funded when I started.
Wow.
I can remember the days of the person that has my job would come down the hall and say, hey, I've got, like we all know, your state dollars, use them or lose them, right?
Right.
I got these state dollars. And for us, I mentioned Dr. Dove's name earlier, we started learning that we would pretty much have technology projects ready to go, because we could pretty much count on the end of a UT fiscal year, he'd have it. So, we were ready. Like, I need this.
What project are we going to do this
Well, I
year?
need this. You didn't have a lot of time, so
Yeah.
we were already kind of had some outline of, of things to do. But now, even more critical, there's such a competitive thing about what you spend your dollars on, that you really do have to start thinking through, what are the financial implications in terms of HR, service agreements, technology, contracts, like to actually deploy, own something. And
and that takes a long time.
Takes, and takes somebody with that
forever.
savvy to still be plugged in, do well. What are we going to do? And you would hope, whether it's technologists, it's finance, whatever it might be, they're here to support us with the skill set that they bring to the table. We're going to be better because of it.
Yep. And what is your best time management tip?
That's a
Wake up at 3 a.m. I don't know.
I think to-do list would be would be it. I think for myself, probably overcommitted was one thing, and so how do you keep yourself on track, and how do you circle around? If I tell the advice that I give to the students, I just had them yesterday. This is the pre-doc. I said, planning tactical or strategic. I said, every week, if you really did it right, or monthly or bi-monthly, you'd kind of sit down and what's my next week look like? What do I have to have ready? So you don't look up one day, oh my gosh, I
It's
forgot.
due tomorrow.
This is due tomorrow. So and then thinking about, for example, on Monday I have the opportunity to have the DS1s, entering DS1s. They get their laptops, and there's a number of things. So believe it or not, we have some agreements we have to distribute. Those have to be printed, right? So you think about, so you start dividing the task down to well, I can't print that 5 minutes before I walk in. Can I modify my PowerPoint slide 2 minutes before I start? Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you start having to break things down, what needs to be done first? What's got the most suspense time on something? And so that's how I've started thinking, so if you have, this thing's got, 20 moving parts, how do you sequence things to what really does need to be done, first? I think to-do lists are important, and again, if I practice what I preach, you would be sitting down, looking
thinking about it.
And now we all have our electronic calendars. You're looking ahead several weeks to say, do I start plowing in time in my schedule, to work on things.
And what advice would you give the younger Dr. Guest?
Oh, I would say learn how to maybe separate work and play a little bit. One of my favorite movies is Kevin Costner, For Love of the Game, and people that have seen it, he's like a Nolan Ryan.
It's baseball, right?
Yeah, he's baseball. He's like one of the greatest pitchers ever. And the opening scene of the movie comes out, and he's on the mound, and they're in New York. They're in their Yankee Stadium, right? Loud horns. People are cussing at him. They're blowing their horns, and he's up on the mound, and all of a sudden he's going to throw the first pitch, and basically the camera zeroes in, and all he sees is the catcher and the mitt. And he goes, and it's the stupidest thing. He says, clear the mechanism. So I can tell Costner, well, it's the stupidest line he ever said. But what he was really saying is hey, I can't do anything about these noises, around me. What is my job? And my job is to strike that batter out. The pitches I'm going to make. Yeah. So it doesn't really matter if someone's blowing the horn or cussing at me. That's what I have to do. And I think that's both with us professionally, and personally, where you could say the same thing. I leave at 5, 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night, whatever it is. But just being able to shut it off. And that's a real tough one. That's what we all wrestle with, to say, hey, I'm going to zero in on the fun part, first. But when I'm at work, same thing. I know we all bring our own you can bring personal issues, but how do you zero that out? Because you can't do anything about them, while you're here. And that's just a tough one for all of us. How do you separate?
Balance.
But if somehow you would
separate and balance.
Balance at the same time, because you start realizing you can't do anything about that.
Right.
Or because
I can't forget I have kids whenever I walk in
whatever,
the door.
because then you end up degrading the experience on both sides. So I think if I would have said the younger one, and then there are a couple of things in our conversation about were there maybe some other training opportunities, had the chance for the master's in education. I've probably done an MBA at this point. Like I got an honorary one. That would have been some things. And I did probably a little bit too long. I straddled. I did have private practice and was here, and probably not done that, as long. But there was a set of circumstances. I think I was meant to be here, and mayy that set of circumstances happened for a reason.
Yes,
and timing's everything, as they say. So
yeah. And if you were not associate dean for patient care and a professor here, what would you be doing? What's your dream job?
Oh, I think the leadership thing is something with leadership and the technology piece, I think would have motivated me, no matter what. Just looking at it now, I mean, you like those things. You could say, with the coaching aspect, could you have done, something like that, and the impact that you make there. So those could have been a couple things, I would have considered outside of winning that lottery that they just did this morning. But
I know who won the lottery, and it's funny enough. I read tips on what to do if you do win the lottery, so now I know.
Yeah.
Just in case I didn't even play, but in case I did, there's certain things you need to do.
And then you see, if my sense of balance would, fighter pilot or F1 driver, it would have been something like that. Now that's farthest thing, but I think a lot of us like the guys what? Yeah, you'd love to be strapped to a rocket at 200 miles an hour.
Why not? Yeah, no, definitely. Well, thank you so much.
Yes.
That concludes our standard questions.
Yeah.
And we're going to move on to our rapid fire set of questions.
Okay.
Now, Dr. Gass, what's your favorite color?
Well, what is it? Lilac, because of the dental. See, this is my Thursday outfit. Always lilac on Thursday. Well, it is.
You're representing the brand.
It was blue for a long. Red when I was at Texas Tech. Blue for a number of years. But these are our official colors, and we pretty much have it. You can come over and see UT Dentistry scrubs.
Nice. And your favorite food?
I'd have to say now, just being in San Antonio, there's nothing like Mexican food here in town.
Agree.
It's like when you go someplace, that's probably the first thing you want to come back. And,
I know. I was just in Austin. I love Austin.
Yeah.
And my friends are like, "Where's a great place to get Mexican food?"
Yeah.
Not in Austin.
Yeah. Well, and I love Italian food too, but it's you realize when you leave here for a while, first thing that's what you want to do. The first thing you get back.
Yeah. And your favorite movie?
Oh, that was a good one. Dances with Wolves for a number of years. Another
you're a Kevin Costner
I'm a
fan,
very big Costner fan. it's kind of an epic movie. Over,
Dances with Wolves is a classic.
Over time. Real fond of the latest Top Gun Maverick, movie. It just holds your.
I still haven't seen the new one.
But
do you watch Yellowstone?
Yes, and I watched Yellowstone.
Okay, good. Yeah. I liked 1882 better than the Yellowstone. And your dream vacation?
Gosh, I'm still waiting to go on Italy. I guess
Italy.
I haven't been there. We through my work, I've been to many places in the U.S., but I think for my wife and I on our bucket list now is some to Europe, particularly Italy.
Yep.
You mentioned the series Yellowstone, but we haven't been there and done that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
My son, as the developer, spent a lot of time on the West Coast. We were very fortunate to spend some time out there. We'd also like to visit Japan.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah. Are you retiring soon?
Yes.
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 Okay, cool. So that's why this list is expanding all of a sudden.
Yeah. Well, and unfortunately, several years ago with COVID, we couldn't go any place.
Oh,
but
I know.
I think we're seeing that people are starting to make up lost time now.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I didn't even want to go to the grocery store then, but now we're going all over the place. We're outside now. Dream car?
Well, I actually drove one. So I have a real good friend that's a retired oral surgeon, got me in it. So we went to Atlanta. That's where the U.S. headquarters for Porsche is.
Okay.
And drove a Porsche GT3 RS. And that's their, that's...
How fast did you get to go?
Well, they didn't measure speed. They measured it in G-force. So they have a track there, and you get in as my instructor. He was at Indy for a number of years, and you don't have time to look at but they have a G meter, and so you're measuring G-force. But it was an awesome machine.
Oh, that's a great experience.
Yeah.
Wow. And if you could be any kitchen appliance, what would you be?
Kitchen appliance.
Mm-hmm.
I would be the controller that's the safe kit, the controller that controls all the kitchen appliances, like a smart home type, type device. you
I
know,
can see
something.
I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah, you know that.
I don't even know if that exists, but if it
Or
did.
the smart refrigerator, you know, that has all the, you know, besides keeping things.
It tells you the temperature
It tells
and
you the
everything
temperature,
else
dispenses the
outside,
water,
your
you know,
calendar.
kind of a utility player. So, yeah.
I love that, and it totally fits your personality as well.
Yeah.
So, thank you so much,
Yes.
Dr. Guest, for
My
being
pleasure.
on our podcast. It was a pleasure to have you.
It was wonderful to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for taking time to listen to today's podcast, brought to you by the Staff Advisory Council in partnership with Marketing and Communications. Find us on My UT Health and submit ideas for future episodes. I'm Celeste Rodriguez, and remember, the only one that can reach their full potential and create a better tomorrow is you. Thank you so much for listening.